Thank you so much for joining my Mod Rock Jam podcast. I'm Giselle, and I usually start off the podcast of who you currently jamming to. I know Spotify, they just did the rap, so I'm going to ask you this. Who are your top 5 artists? They don't have to be on Spotify, but just in general, who's your top 5 artists of all time?
I have two types of listening, what I call active listening and passive listening. Passive is background noise, right? It surprises a lot of people that as a musician, I do not passively listen to music. When I'm at my home, when I'm in my car, I never have music on as background noise. I think that's sort of two or threefold. One, because I sort of like a clean canvas. Two, because out of respect for what music means for me, I put it on with purpose for a reason. And usually it's a very specific thing. If I happen to put on a radio, because I do listen to the terrestrial radio for college radio here in Los Angeles still. So if I listen to college radio, when I want to learn something new or be surprised, I put on college radio stations in Los Angeles because invariably, depending on who the DJ is, the jock is, or the person programming, I'm going to hear something different. It could be world music. It could be talk. It could be a local band they bring in. That's exciting. I listen to Sirius, First Wave, and
Same.
sometimes I listen to XMU, but I'm usually not finding the stuff that speaks to me too deeply on XMU, but I do like to be aware of what's there. I don't follow popular music like pop music. The other reason why I don't do passive listening is because if I'm working on music, I don't want input. I just want output. And if I do take in input, it's from something that's so diametrically opposed or different than what it is that I'm making. So I'm very aware of what I've been listening to because it's not like it's always the background noise. I listen to podcasts in the car, or I'll have silence in the car or the radio that I talked to you about. Unless it's like I made a playlist, and a lot of times I write my lyrics when I'm driving. So quite often I'm listening to music that I'm working on.
So you kind
So
of need that silence.
well, actually, it's not silenced. I put on the instrumental that I'm supposed to be writing to. Like they say, and when you study in the theater or acting, at least the type of theater that I studied when I was younger in hopes of learning how to direct actors in directing, they say that like an actor's of Stella Adler, Uta Hagen, Harold Clurman, Sanford Meisner sort of method or old school 50s and 60s technique of American acting, they say that if you're just standing there saying your lines, you're going to be focused on the lines and then you're going to be acting. But if you're trying to figure out a remote control and you're trying to figure out how this works and you're doing something with that, and you also have your lines, then your primary purpose is to figure out the remote control. So you're not putting the same emphasis and import on the lines and they fall out, which is why when you see Brad Pitt in an Ocean's movie and he's eating a cheeseburger, it's because he wants to be natural and he doesn't want to be sitting there going like, looking at you saying the lines like a cool guy. So for the same reason, I discovered by accident that when I'm driving and my primary purpose is to not get into an accident and to get to the destination, if the music is playing in the background, my critical mind turns off and I just start stream of conscious singing melodies and words. And that's how I write. So a long-winded way of answering, the only thing that I've been active listening to lately is Dijon. Dijon is an artist that I will resist classifying. He is an incredible songwriter. I think he's helped pioneer a type of production. And I just think he's, to me, the most exciting person making music sonically. And just, it's very pleasing to me. And everything about this individual, I'm just in love with. And so the only thing I've listened to recently was a little John Carpenter from his scores. I discovered a Sisters of Sea EP that I really wasn't that familiar with because I'm not an obsessive Sisters of Mercy person. But in trying to reference a drum sound for a live performance that a friend and I were doing for an art rock project for a store opening in Venice, California, I was referencing Suicide and Sisters of Mercy, but then I was like, well, what sisters am I talking about? Is it the first single? And then I found the Body and Soul EP and I was like, I'd seen the artwork. I'd probably heard one song, but I listened to it and I was like, this is quite exciting. So really, I haven't been listening to a lot of music. But my Spotify Wrapped is probably like, it's always like, wow, you really like this one artist.
It's true. So I think a new feature on Spotify Rap, or I should say Voldemort, is a listening age. And I've been listening to a lot of Depeche Mode. I've been a huge fan of Depeche Mode since like high school and in college.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
my listening age is 55, even though I'm 31.
Welcome to my generation.
And I know that you toured with Depeche Mode many moons ago, as well as the Psychedelic Furs, I believe that I read. But how was that like touring with? I know at the time they were like your big influences into
Yeah.
new wave.
Yeah. So I was already friends with Martin Gore and had a relationship. I don't want to say friends, but I was very friendly with Dave Gahan and I was very friendly with Andrew Fletcher, rest in peace. What I didn't know was that the person who was their music director and doing a lot of their all of their sort of onstage programming was somebody who I was even closer with, a guy named Kerry Hopwood, who I made records with in the 90s when I lived in London. So when I went out on tour, I was most excited because Adam is probably more obsessive about mode than I am, right? And I've like spent time and hung out and had incredible memories and experiences with Martin, as well as actually, to be honest, all three of them separately. But I've never like stood side stage with them or, been in the pit, like looking up at them and then going backstage and seeing the way the sausage is made and having an intimate view to see how they build the show and what that looks like over the course of weeks. So I was really excited for Adam and my other bandmates. What ended up happening for me was it felt like it was going to grad school. Okay, this is how you do it. And I still will argue with rockers and say, I don't care who you're talking about. The greatest rock concert on earth with the best frontman on the planet. It's not Mick Jagger, right? It's not Dave Grohl. I'm sorry. It's Dave Gahan and it's Depeche Mode. And when they're like, "Whoa, just can't get enough," I'm like, "You're an idiot." One, I say two, when he does this,
Hmm.
at Never Let Me Down Again, I just got goosebumps, hairs on my arms raised. If by that point in the show, you are not convinced that that's the best concert on the planet, then you just don't know what you're talking about.
That's so funny. I was just gonna ask you that. What was the best concert you attended? You just answered that question. I've seen Depeche Mode twice. I've also seen tribute bands of Depeche Mode. And when you see a tribute band, you want them to copy the mannerisms of Dave and Martin. And so you have to do the spin that Dave does on stage.
Spin,
Yeah.
the wind up and spin. It's a wind up, and then he looks at you. He does the "I'm gonna do it," and then he does it. No, I mean it's incredible. I mean he's the greatest. They're the greatest. I mean there's really not much more you can say about that. They hold a very, very, very special place. And when you were saying about your listening taste being like somebody who's 55, I'm 52. I think the really great thing about music is like, I listen to a lot of music. My son is 18. When he was younger, I still listened to music that was like, what are the kids listening to? And I don't mean like kids, I mean like, are young people listening to? Hip hop came to me 1984, and really in 1988, it crystallized with this is the most important thing because the music changed around 88. But 88 was a big seminal year for me musically, the same way that hip hop was for young people. It wasn't for my parents. It wasn't for boomers. It was for Gen X. There's music that's not for Gen X now. That's for, the Zoomers. That's for the kids, right? That music, some of it really resonates with me. And it's very important for me as a person, let alone an artist, to not ever be a get off my lawn. You kids don't understand. We did it right and we had the best music and what you're doing is crap. And I just reject that. Having said that, I think that music of all genres could benefit from focusing on the craft of songwriting because in the genre of dark wave, I was having this conversation with Adam Braven, my partner in She Wants Revenge last night. We're
Mhm.
in the studio. Somebody was saying to him about the music that they like in the dark wave genre that there's really more old stuff that they love, but they love a couple of songs from the newer stuff. I love a lot of music across eras. However, I think that the problem with the technology that we have, that I could get something, and if you said in 5 minutes, get something that can make a beat that sounds like D'Angelo, or get a keyboard on your phone that will make it sound like Molchat Doma. Two groups that I think are, I mean, D'Angelo is one of my favorite artists of all time, and I think Molchat Doma makes better dark music than 90% of the young people out there doing it now. But with the proliferation of this technology, there's so much focus on process and style and sound that people never really stop to think, what am I saying? So it's like, it feels as if somebody's like, I want to make a painting, but I have no idea what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to make it look cool and these colors look great. And to take it back to songwriting, it's like somebody's like, I have the drum machine that everyone uses for the perfect dark wave song. I have the keyboard sound that I have downloaded that is exactly like the New Order sound. And I know how to play bass or guitar exactly like that thing that I like from Joy Division. Okay, great. Did you listen to, let's just take Joy Division, for example. Did you grow up knowing the catalog of all of the music of David Bowie from the early, folk records through when he was in the Spiders from the Mars and the Berlin era and the Philly soul of young Americans? And did you then listen to Iggy and the Stooges and also become really into the Doors? Because for that to happen, and then you discovered the Sex Pistols and everything changed because then you were like, how do I see it through this new lens? Well, that allowed those four guys in Manchester to sit in a room with those influences and everything that came before and express themselves and write a song. They weren't doing it because Hooky was like, I'm going to play bass high up the neck. One of them picked up a guitar and was like, I'm going to play these guitars that sound like this. People are reverse engineering it right now. So a lot of music to me, even though it's cool, it sounds like it's made for a commercial, as opposed to a song that expresses an idea, a thought, a feeling, or a mood. And one could say, well, there are moods to the music that's being expressed right now. Yes, but like, where are the songs? Like Depeche Mode, The Cure, Johnny Marr, Soft Cell, some of these groups. I mean, there's so many of that era. Duran.
Nick Rhodes is the coolest keyboardist. I strive to look as cool as him.
Oh my God. Right. When I was like 11, I just was obsessed with John Taylor. Like, I didn't even play bass. I wanted to play keys like Nick Rhodes, and I really wanted like Roland synthesizers like Junos and Jupiters, and I wanted to look like those guys. My point is, the craft of songwriting is lost. So I don't care whether you are a young group that's doing like indie sleaze second time around. I don't care if you're doing dark wave. I don't care if you're doing alt Americana. I don't care if you're doing straight up trap rap music. If you write a great song, then all of the sounds and the vibe is secondary, because like, you have to connect with someone on a human level. So the only sort of get off my lawn 52-year-old rant that I have in me is, there's so many people making music that's so exciting and interesting these days. But if they just spent a little bit more time thinking about the song that they want to sing, then they're going to blow everybody away because they already have the style down so well, you know?
And you grew up in a musical household. You mentioned in a previous podcast about your dad working in promotions for 20th Century and CBS Records. When you became a rapper, when you got signed at the age of 16, did your dad ever give you advice or warn you about joining the music industry?
You know, it's funny because we never talked about it. My dad's contribution to my musical upbringing is being a lunatic who would play the same song over and over and over in the house that he loved, would be having a record collection that now is on my walls by taking me to radio stations, because sometimes I didn't want to go to school and I would cut school to go with him to radio stations because I thought it was cool where I could request and go into the DJ booth. And for being around peak experiences like going to Barry White's house or going to the world premiere of Michael Jackson Thriller or the Grammys and things like that. He had no idea that I had an interest in music, because when I was growing up, I didn't want to make music. When I was growing up, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be a writer and a director. Yes, I had a drum set and guitar and, the other things like that that lots of kids did. I did not have the discipline or the ability to stick with lessons, and I quit everything. When I discovered hip hop, I was so obsessed, breakdancing, hip hop, graffiti all at once, and I started doing all three of those. I asked him to buy me some turntables and a mixer, and he did. And that was my first introduction. So the best thing he ever did for me was giving me those turntables. And then my mom bought me a drum machine, and I started making beats. My dad didn't know that I was in the record industry and making music until he heard from somebody that I got a record deal. I had incredible privilege and grew up in an incredible space. My mom contributed more to my musical upbringing in a lot of ways, because she had an acoustic guitar and she'd be like, you got to listen to this Beatles record, or here's this illustrated book of Beatles lyrics with Peter Max drawings, and I still have that, or here's why James Taylor or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young is amazing. And her brother was like, bought me my 3 first vinyl albums. I think it was in 1983, so I would have been 10 years old, and I was obsessed with Bowie because Let's Dance had come out, and it was the #1 album in America. And my uncle bought me Electric Ladyland by Jimi Hendrix, Experience. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere by Neil Young, which is a wild thing to get a 10-year-old, and Man Who Sold the World by David Bowie, which most people only really knew once Kurt Cobain covered it on Unplugged. So I had a great, rich musical upbringing, as well as the things that my dad played in the house, which is a lot of like Temptations, a lot of Motown era stuff, Isley Brothers, Luther Vandross, records that he'd be working and promoting. But it was all really a surprise to him because my parents were divorced when I started making music. So I didn't see him all the time. And so people sort of think that like I was like in some smoky back rooms and my dad was like, hey, this is my son, give him a deal. I mean, one of the coolest things that ever happened was, some 25, 30 years later, She Wants Revenge got signed by Fred Durst to Geffen Records. And there's 2 presidents at the time, a guy named Jordan Schur, who had really been a pretty incredible executive and like doing a lot, like launching Limp Bizkit and a lot of these groups of that era, and then signing Fred signed a lot of other people, which really did a lot for Interscope Records and Geffen Records. And the co-president was a woman named Polly Anthony, who was my dad's boss for a period at Epic Records years later. So when I went in with Adam and our manager, Tom, to have a meeting about She Wants Revenge when the record was done, and we walked into the office, Polly was like, wait, I know you. Yeah, like I'm Reese's son. And she's like, wait, you're the singer of She Wants Revenge? And she was just like, this is so great. Wow, I can't believe this. I already love the music. You're Reese's son. I love this. Like, so it's nice to have an ally.
Mhm.
But like my dad found out about me being a rapper when I was 16 when he read about me in the magazines.
You mentioned about filmmaking, how you wanted to do that as a teenager. I think your son is currently doing that, and sadly, we lost Rob Reiner. I'm sure you grew up with his films. Did he inspire you at all to be a filmmaker at the time when you were
Oh
trying to
man,
pursue
I'm
that?
so glad. Thank you so much for asking me this. Thank you so much. Wow, that makes me so emo. When I saw the movie The Sure Thing, which a lot of people don't know because it's not streaming, because I think the soundtrack would be too expensive. It's like a legal thing. It's on YouTube. So if you're listening and watching this pod, a movie called The Sure Thing, it's only Rob Reiner's second film after this is Spinal Tap. Spinal Tap hadn't even come out yet. It's starring a 17-year-old John Cusack, Daphne Zuniga, Nicolette Sheridan, Anthony Edwards, who played Goose in Top Gun, and a lot of seeds of When Harry Met Sally were in this movie. It's a road movie. It's a love story. It was my favorite movie when it came out when I was a kid. And When Harry Met Sally is the greatest romantic comedy of all time, and a movie that I probably watched about 60 times on VHS. I mean, Stand By Me is like my generation's Big Chill. Those kids are my age. They're actually like 2 years older. That is my generation. And we can go down the list. But the coolest thing about Rob Reiner to me was the way he used his voice for those who didn't have the ability or the same voice and platform. His politics, his activism. He was the best. There's a Yiddish word, mensch, and he was just a mensch. Like, he was the best. I'll just say one little anecdote. He used to have lunch at the same place, I think like maybe every day. Because sometimes when I used to drop off a rent check for a duplex I used to live in, when it was late, I would have to go physically run it. And every time I went to drop off the rent check, the restaurant in the lobby, he was invariably eating with somebody. And whenever I'd walk up, he would turn and look and we would lock eyes. And I was like, it's so cool.
You mentioned about She Wants Revenge. Was this ever on your bingo card? So Joaquin Phoenix, he directed Tear You Apart, and then Lady Gaga suggested it for American Horror Story, and then later the two worked together in Joker 2.
I never put that together. I never made that connection. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. 2 days ago, Gaga did like 10 songs that were most important in my life, and she listed Tear You Apart and went on to explain it. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Walk was already a friend. That was only surprising because he was like, I have an idea for the video. I was like, okay. I met my wife on a set of one of his videos that he directed for another group. So there's a lot of connectivity there and a lot of special meaning that without Joaquin and that video and that group doing that video, I would have never met my wife. So like there's really amazing things there. Yeah, that wasn't on my bingo card.
It's kind of like your own Harry Met Sally, or I think Rob Reiner said that's how he met his wife, was on set of Harry Met Sally.
And in fact, the ending, they weren't supposed to be together. And he
Mhm.
changed Nora Ephron's ending and said he was so inspired by falling in love that he He made the super sappy, I love that little crinkle in your eye when you look at me confused, like this is the greatest rom-com moment ever.
So her new album Mayhem is so good. I just listened to it for the first time. I was super late, but it's also like a very gothy, dark album as well.
Yeah. I mean, she goes on to explain that if you go and after this and you look at the interview, she says, when she was in her early 20s living in New York, that Depeche Mode,
And
I
The
think Depeche,
Cure.
Depeche Mode, The Cure, and She Wants Revenge were like, she said, her inner soundtrack, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's so awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your new project, Warfield, which is through Cleopatra
Cleopatra.
Records. I actually interviewed another band that was signed at the time, Night. They're from like Texas or Canada. I want to discuss about the album cover art because at first it looked like a full moon. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking up from a grave, right?
Mhm. So you really hit where it says Deathrock Devotionals.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I work in music is I jump across genres. What's great about Warfield is it's not a one-off project. It's not a moment of time. It's a way for me to explore the type of music that I've been exploring in She Wants Revenge for the last 23 or 24 years, but do it through a different lens with a different palette and in a way that I never would with She Wants Revenge. So it's the muscles that I flexed and developed over the last 23 or 4 years, but in a new playground. Whereas if I'm making hip hop, I would just go by Justin Warfield. And if I'm in She Wants Revenge with my partner, then it's She Wants Revenge. For example, I just did music for a coming of age film, and I produced the soundtrack and helped with a few bits of composition. I use my name in that. Warfield is its own band, and it's a way for me to express a different kind of energy. For this album, it ended up being an energy that was like high energy, youthful, fun, at a time where it feels like the world is sort of collapsing and it feels like so many things are changing in a way, hopefully not irreparably, that are sort of scary. How do we find ecstatic joy and celebration and fun amidst that sort of paranoia and anxiety? And it all comes from process. Like I was saying about process before, I have a drum machine. I turn on the drum machine. I turn it up super fast. I start playing something. I've been thinking about something or reading a book or watching a movie or something inspires me. And I've been thinking about a period in Los Angeles because I'm writing a film right now that takes place in 1985. Thinking about Hong Kong Cafe, the Atomic Cafe, Madame Wong's West, the Mask, the Cafe, the Stardust Ballroom, these punk rock places in Los Angeles where these kids were hanging out. And then when I pick up a guitar and I start playing, it's no accident that it feels and sounds like something that came off the fingers of like Rick Agnew when he made the Blue Album by the Adolescents or Only Theater of Pain by Christian Death. But then when I sit down to write the lyrics, rather drive in my car and they start coming to me, whatever has been going on in my head, in my life, in the world comes through me as some idea. And then I am the filter. And then I start telling these stories and writing these songs. And I'm a sucker for a hook. I don't like vibe songs for me. It's very hard for me to write a song that doesn't have like a sing-along chorus. And I don't do it intentionally. It's just the way that I'm wired because I grew up on that 80s pop stuff, which everything was a big hook.
Mhm.
Madonna, huge influence.
I love, Fades, and when I hear that song, I think you mentioned about even writing it while you're in the car, but it's such like a night drive song to me, and I think you mentioned it was like a song that felt to you like an Ian Curtis mix with The Doors.
Yeah, I mean, Getaway Far Away, when I heard it, meaning like in my head, wow, this is a very like 90s sort of grunge guitar progression. That sort of Nirvana-y thing. But when I heard that progression, I just heard, you'll be driving through the valley, see your eyes are red and sore. And I was like, oh my God, like I've been accused of Ian Curtis stuff for years. And I was like, that really reminds me of that sweet spot between when Jim Morrison wasn't sort of ridiculous and when he was brilliant and wonderful in the very beginning, and Ian Curtis, but in my own way, driving through Los Angeles on these dark, foggy streets. And it just felt so evocative that I wanted to paint the picture in my head. And it sounds like It worked.
You mentioned about your partner, Adam Braven. He has another project. It's called The Death of Lilies, also a really good side project. Now, I'm looking forward to when you start touring. Hopefully, you play. There's a venue in San Francisco. It's called the Warfield. So I think Warfield, Marquee Warfield
Only
would be.
played it once. I played it once with, She Wants Revenge, played with Placebo there. It was, 20 years ago.
Oh, damn. I've never seen Placebo. I always wanted to go see them. And then I saw She Wants Revenge for the first time. It was this year at Cruel World Festival.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite festival.
It's fairly new too.
Yeah, it's great. It's so fun. It's like I call it goth prom. Like, all of our friends are there, like, it's in our hometown. I live, like, 15 minutes away.
Oh, wow.
You
Very
see
close.
all your friends, like, you park easy, you walk, you go from stage to stage, you have some Monty's, vegan burgers and ice cream, and usually it's so hot. It was nice that we brought the rain this time.
Oh, absolutely. Especially Garbage was there, only happy when it rains. Okay, so I'm wearing obviously my Never Before Christmas sweater, and I know years ago you did a cover of Kidnap the Sandy Claus. How were you approached to do that cover?
I don't remember. Somebody said, Danny is gonna participate in a, covers record. Would you be interested? And Adam had seen the movie and was, like, a real fan of it, was like, "Oh my god, of course." I don't think I saw the movie at that point because my son was too young. Like, and I am not a real big animation person. Um, I later became very, very, very well versed in the movie because my child became obsessed with the movie, which was pretty cool when we would go to Disneyland and
Mhm.
they would be playing our Kidnap the Sandy Claus by the Haunted Mansion. And,
Oh, that's awesome.
his mom would go, "Look, that's daddy, that's daddy." So, we were approached about it. We tried to figure it out and we recorded it. I think we recorded some of it in New Orleans. Actually, we did record a lot of it in New Orleans, which is a very sort of goth thing to do. But
Absolutely.
we were recording it in, like, backstage at shows and in hotel rooms. It was really fun. I didn't have a lot of knowledge around the movie, but the thing is, I was a massive Oingo Boingo fan when I was a kid, and I loved his scores. And I loved, Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice and all that stuff, so it was exciting to be a part of that lineage, and yeah, it's really cool.
Can we discuss about our mutual love for the movie Flashdance?
Oh my god, like, I think the most embarrassing thing about my childhood is that, like, at a family get together afterwards in one of those movies where it's like, "Okay, we finished dinner, now go down to the basement and show them the song that you learned to play." My mom would be like, "Show them your Flashdance dance, Justin," because I didn't have, like, the water bucket or whatever, but, like, I
Just so
was
throws a bucket.
yeah. Well, because there was a period when I was young that because of the movie and TV show Fame, I wanted to dance. I was very interested, and I actually, when I was in middle school, I applied to a LA art-based prep school, and they were like, "Well, what will your art focus be?" And I said, "Dance." And the teacher was thrilled because there was no male dancers. And I was like, "I'm gonna be like Leroy from Fame, and I'm gonna be this incredible jazz ballet dancer." And I was a really good dancer, which I'm not now. But as soon as I got to school, I switched to film, and they were really upset.
Okay, so in less than a minute, Justin, what do you want to say about your project Warfield?
All I ask is that people find a way to discover it because I'm so proud of it. I love the music so much. I'm so glad that I found the partners at Cleopatra who understood the vision. I would encourage people to listen to Deathrock Devotionals, the album as a whole. If you are into and support physical media, the album is available on vinyl and CD. And I would encourage people to not stream it, but to buy the record, not so that I can make money, but so that I can continue to make records
Yeah.
with my partners. And I would encourage people for free to watch the music videos on the Cleopatra YouTube.